So I took the kids to that birthday party last weekend.
Right.
And they were fighting over everything, like what type of temporary tattoo they got, even though it was super girly, and our son is usually all boys and trucks and dinosaurs, this or that, and I'm just embarrassed by how much the kids were fighting, and they're probably looking at me like, well, she doesn't discipline her kids. And at what point is it the parents' fault? It's the parents' fault. Welcome to Azimuth Podcast. I'm Kimberly McNabb.
And I'm Barrett McNabb.
So, there's some obvious cases out there where it is the parents' fault. Take, for instance, they just sentenced Jennifer Crumbly to years in prison for her son Ethan doing that school shooting up in Michigan.
Right. That's a very interesting case because, along with the national news of it being obviously a mass shooting, one of the things that was important to look at was one of the first times where the parents of the criminal defendant, in this case, the mass shooter, would be criminally charged in conjunction with the crime. And that's what really kind of made this case interesting, was whether or not the parents could actually be not necessarily co-conspirators, but be charged with the crime. And in this case, it turns out the answer is yes.
Well, is it one of those slippery slopes like, well, they didn't commit the crime, and I did the best I could raising my kid, but they went off and made their own decisions because, we tell our kids all the time, say please, say thank you, stop fighting, stop hitting your sister, and yet they have the free will to do things against your wishes. Is it one of those cases?
Yeah, so in the Army, there's a phrase is that you can delegate authority, but you can't delegate responsibility. So the person in charge is ultimately responsible for the success or failure of the union. So in this particular instance, we have a number of factors that played into the parents being charged, and I really think that it's the correct move. I know a lot of times people say this is a slippery slope of where culpability lies, but when you look at the fact that the mother purchased the firearm for someone underneath that was under the age of 21, and in reality, that would be considered a straw purchase, which is illegal to do that. When you are filling out the background check on your firearms purchase, it says, are you purchasing this firearm for yourself or for somebody else? It's a really trick question because if you check the box, I'm buying it for somebody else, that's a crime. And so you'll get denied on your background check. So in this particular instance, we know that she purchased the firearm for her son because there was either the Instagram post or something like that, social media post that said, here I am, I'm at the gun range with mommy and son day, and it's his new present. So
his new gun,
his new gun, his new present. So obviously she purchased it for him, which makes it automatically a straw purchase. But also he's under the age of 21. He's not supposed to have a handgun anyway. Long guns are usually 18. But in this particular instance, we see that she, had the first instance of committing, potentially a crime right there. So then add into the lack of the firearm being stored properly, right? So so in some states, it's illegal to allow a person under the age of 21 or minor to have access to a firearm. And she did say, hey, look, firearms aren't my thing, even though
she took him to the range and bought the gun. So she seems pretty comfortable to me.
Exactly. Yeah, that's literally what I was about to say, Kimberly. So, but yeah, so she said, firearms aren't my thing. And the father was the one that was supposed to lock up the firearm. And obviously, we see that's again another violation. Then we get into warning signs. There's text messages between her and her son where he sees demons and he sees ghosts and things like that. Now, she tried to play this off as it was just an inside joke between the two of them, but I don't think anybody was laughing at any mental health issues that were going on there. And then let's get into the school itself. When he's doing the drawings that say, I can't get the voices out of my head, and I'm paraphrasing here because I don't have his exact drawing, but it was a violent drawing, and the voices are telling him to kill people and stuff, and she gets called into the principal's office, and they're like, look, your son needs mental help. And she said, look, I'm not taking him out. And then the principal has a rumor that the
principal knew there was a gun and
there was a firearm.
Didn't even bother to tell the mother, like, hey, we heard that there might be a gun in your son's bag while you're here. Can we ask you to look into your son's bag with, in our presence? If it were a locker, it would be school property, so they would have the right to just go and do it.
That's a no-brainer.
So yeah, if the parents are at fault, what about the principal?
Yeah, there's plenty of culpability to go around. Because it was just a few hours
later the shooting happened.
Yeah, there's plenty of culpability. Now, as far as, in my opinion, I am not an attorney. I do have a Bachelor of Science degree in criminal justice, so I am able to speak to criminal law. But again, everything that I say, I'm not an attorney, and nor do I purport myself to be one. But in my opinion, I would say that the principal wouldn't necessarily be criminally charged because I don't know if the statute of being making the decision not to do a search of the bag or falls under criminal liability, but certainly it's eligible for tort, which is a lawsuit, a civil suit, and I haven't read up on what's happening to the school district, but I can only imagine that the parents of the students that were injured and were killed
could
certainly going to
go
file
after the principal.
Yeah, certainly going to file a lawsuit against the school district and the school and the principal and on down the line.
Yeah. So the mom stored the gun improperly. That's pretty obvious. Also, she received text messages from the son saying, I want to hurt people. I see demons, blah, blah, and she just ignored them. And so it's rumored that she was involved in an affair. So she was probably a little distracted from that one. So she just, I think this is a pretty obvious case of, you have some responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely. If there hadn't been, so let's just, kind of walk the dog on this. If there hadn't been the illegal straw purchase of a firearm to give to her minor child, or not minor, but...
so at least on that, she should go to prison.
Yeah, there's just this domino effect that's going. So you have the straw purchase, and then you have the improper storing of the firearm. And, really, for her to say it was the dad's fault, they're both adults. Mm-hmm. And the child is a child, so you have to take ownership. Again, you can't delegate that responsibility away, and so you can delegate the authority to say that the father is the one that's supposed to lock up the firearm, but that doesn't mean that you aren't responsible for actions if one of the parents doesn't do it. You both should be aware of what's going on.
Mm-hmm. So raise your kids, people.
Right. Absolutely. It's kind of amazing, and this kind of ties into
another case of improper storage. So also in Michigan, what's going on up there? Right. So a dad did not store the firearm properly, and one day after Michigan passed a law about safe storage of guns, a dad's gun ended up in the hands of a little 2-year-old.
Right.
And she shot herself in the face. And so he is going to jail.
Right.
But again, another instance of someone lying about purchasing a gun because he's a felon, and felons are not supposed to have guns. But this is just another argument for you can have all the gun laws you want, but you're just making it harder for people who
are law-abiding,
who actually follow the rules to follow the rules. Because this guy did not follow the rules, and this precious little 2-year-old is in the hospital, and they're saying best case scenario, she loses her right eye. But I mean, shooting through the skull, your chances aren't stellar.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole host of things. So one, he was a convicted felon. He's not supposed to own a firearm anyway. So there's that. Two, he obviously left the firearm out. He says, look, I didn't know how she got a hold of it. Well, she got a hold of it because you left it out. I'll answer that question for you. The other thing is he lied to the police. And so he took the child to the hospital and basically was like, I don't know what happened, things like that. Yeah, everybody knows what happened. The 2-year-old was curious, and, looked
like, I've never seen this before.
Looked down the barrel of the gun and pulled the trigger is ultimately what happened. And so there's no other scenario that could happen. But here we have, if we're looking at a Venn diagram and we're looking to see where these circles of criminal liability, potential criminal liability, and civil liability, I'd have to say, these are overlapping very well for the prosecution.
I think they're way on the far end of definitely.
Yeah, criminal liability.
Yes. But, then there's this kind of slippery slope argument with the Gabby Petito's parents.
Sure.
If you don't recall, she was a 22-year-old travel blogger. She was dating this guy called Brian Laundrie. Yes, his name is actually Laundrie. Like, even the police officer talking to him was like, is your name really Laundrie? So anyway, he killed her, and he came back from Wyoming without her, and the parents, his parents, got on up in front of everyone and was like, well, we hope she comes back. And
yeah, that's the problem that I have.
Her parents are going after his parents.
Right. Yeah. So, apparently, again, we're not attorneys, and we weren't actually present. So this is all based upon news reporting and court documents. But apparently, Brian called his parents, and the parents thought that something was wrong because Brian just said Gabby was gone. And so she says that what went through, and I say she, Brian Laundrie's mom, says that she thought or interpreted that gone was that she got a rental car and was going in a different direction. But apparently Brian called his parents back again and said, look, I need an attorney. I need you to get me an attorney. I'm on my way back to Florida. And again, obviously we're not participants of that phone call, but they did get an attorney. And when Brian returned, the attorney apparently advised them not to talk. Just keep quiet.
Usually a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. So now you've got Gabby's parents and uncle that are on television saying, if anybody knows what's going on with Gabby, please, return her home safe. And here's where I think Brian Laundrie's parents or specifically the mother made a mistake, is they issued a statement saying, we love Gabby. I'm paraphrasing here, but we love Gabby as a daughter, and we hope that she's okay and that she's going to be found and things like that. And more likely than not, at this particular point in time, the parents know that Gabby's dead, right? And so that is what Gabby's parents are suing or sued. I guess there has been a settlement that has been reached. But,
settled an undisclosed amount.
But we're suing for emotional distress because had the Brian's mom just kept her mouth shut and didn't put this false sense of hope out there with with her statement, then it wouldn't have caused emotional distress to Gabby's parents.
Some people would argue, the parents, Brian's parents have the right to free speech, and in times when they were quiet, heeding their counsel's advice,
right?
Also the right to silence. But unfortunately, I guess you don't always have the right to free speech. I mean, you can't say bomb in an airport, so
you can't do slander, can't do libel, things like that. But obviously the whole situation was tragic. There's plenty of lawsuits that are going around. Gabby's parents are suing the police department that did the interaction between the two of them post the report of a domestic abuse
for
incident.
letting him go.
Yeah, for letting him go. When there was witnesses that were testifying that they saw him hit her and things like that. So there's plenty of lawsuits that are going to go around over this case. But when we add this to that Venn diagram that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. We have the criminality over here, and then we have the civil over here. The Crumbleys, as they're going through the justice system, I think the father is now going through his court date, and he's trying to get a lot of the evidence that convicted his wife thrown out.
Right, stack it in, stack it on the wife.
Yeah, exactly. So he's like, look, you already convicted her, so all that stuff's going to be towards her. But when you look at those intersections and where the parents have culpability, so obviously in the father's case, it's 100% mm-hmm. culpability, and looking at that. And then you look into the Laundries on the other end of the spectrum, mm-hmm. not criminally liable for anything because they haven't had any charges, but it's, obviously they mm-hmm. had the civil liability
right.
for that.
And so compared to criminal liability, what's the burden of proof there?
Yeah, so for the civil, it's a preponderance of evidence,
mm-hmm.
and so that's what it is. It's more likely than not, 51%. There's 5 burdens of proof, and the 2 most famous ones that you get on television is the probable cause, which is where police can arrest you, and then beyond a reasonable doubt, which is how you get a conviction. But it starts off with reasonable suspicion, probable cause, preponderance of the evidence, again, more likely than mm-hmm. not. Then you have clear and convincing evidence, and then you have the beyond a reasonable doubt.
Right. I just feel a little bad for them, the Laundries, because, they may have been emotional and made a bad decision, but you got to be careful what you say. But didn't she tell a bad joke?
Yeah, well, so I wouldn't call it a bad joke. She wrote him a letter. She wrote him a letter,
which is
and on the letter
makes me feel a little less sorry for her.
Exactly. So I'm going to disagree with you a little bit on that because she wrote a letter that said "burn after reading," so destruction of evidence, and in it talked about that she was going to bake him a cake and put a shiv in there so he could protect himself. Now, this is not 1940.
Yeah. First of all, that's really stupid.
Right.
We have these things called metal detectors. And so, yeah, don't feel sorry for her at all after hearing about that
exactly.
one.
So, what that does is it says that, hey, look, she's got a mens rea. She has a guilty mind.
Yeah.
Because she knows that her son did do something. If he didn't do something, then why would he be going to jail or prison? And why would she need to bake a cake and put a shiv in it?
Yeah, because I think a reasonable parent, like as much as you love your child, you should smack them in the face and then hand them over to the police and
yeah,
this is what he told me.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. But it was obviously an interesting case. It was kind of captivated the nation, and I think there were a lot of people that were talking about how it was unfair that, or the only reason that it got enough national attention as it did is because it was 2 Caucasian individuals, and that people of color don't really get an opportunity to get national attention like this. But
2 people are dead. okay? Because Brian committed suicide. So keep that in mind. And now people are tangled up in all sorts of lawsuits. So
yeah, but I mean, it just, this, you have to look at the circumstances. I mean, this is crazy. It's
Right.
crazy unusual to see these interactions and to have the body camera footage and things like that, and for her to already, both of them to be social media people because they're doing YouTube van life type stuff as they're going around. So they already had a social media following. So there were a lot of things that led up just to make this case unusual. And I think that's why it got the national
That's why
attention.
it's getting the national attention. Now, do you think that if Brian had not killed himself, would Gabby's parents be would they have gone after Brian's parents? Because, people want someone to punish.
Right.
They want someone to pay for, their daughter being gone. And so usually I think people would be satisfied if the person who actually did it got punished.
Well, yeah. So, obviously, there wasn't a criminal, not that I'm aware of, that there's a criminal case pending against Brian's parents. But I would say, the lawsuit was against Brian Laundrie's estate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't sue Brian's parents. They sued Brian's estate. I think it was for like $3 million.
Well, that's the estate, but this other civil suit is against
it
the
is
parents.
Okay. So yeah. So I mean, it's just I don't know. I think the real reason that they're doing it is for the emotional distress that was caused by the statement of the parents and the fact that they knew that Gabby was dead and purported to hope for the best and hope that she comes home and that kind of thing. So yeah, I would say yes, because when you're looking at who has civil liability, again, there's plenty to go around. And I, a lot of times you're just going to shotgun blast it out there and see what sticks. I don't know what if there was a settlement in the police force. I don't know.
Well, again, that would set another precedent every time a cop lets someone go. But there are plenty of people who don't need to be let go. I can tell you that.
Right.
This is so depressing. Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all of the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in.